Well, hello there, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about shooting while standing and kneeling. Roll the titles. Hello. Before the content starts, just wanted to jump in and say thank you for your support. This channel's been up on YouTube less than 2 months and we're at over 500 subscribers and over 20,000 views, which is absolutely phenomenal and overwhelming. So thanks very much for your support. If you haven't subscribed yet, why not? It's free, do it now. Also, need to say that this is my 13th video and it was recorded on the 13th of the month. I should have taken note of the omen. In an effort to try and deal with the wind noise on another blustery day, it seems that I suffered a lot of audio dropouts and glitches. So please take that into account. Hope it doesn't interfere with your enjoyment of this video. I think the content's worth it. Let's carry on with the video then. What we're going to talk about today then is we're going to talk about the positional shots in HF, but also useful skills if you're a hunter. And I do believe, although I don't know much about field target, I do believe that they do kneeling and standing shots as well. So it's all going to be beneficial for that flavour of shooting as well. We're going to be starting off looking at unsupported standers and kneelers, and then move on to look at how things change if you've got the support of a tree or a post for your supported versions. So let's get on with it then. First we're going to look at the unsupported standing position. Now, I'm not in the habit of trying to reinvent the wheel, so in my research for trying to work out the best way for me to stand during an unsupported standing shot, I looked at all the current standing shooting disciplines like 10-metre air rifle and looked at the way that they stand and the tips and things that I could pick up from them, and that's how I developed my stance I'm going to show you here. So first off, just want to lay a bit of string on the grass here. This bit of string pointing in direct line to the target that I would be aiming at. And the point of this stance is to align my natural point of aim along this line so that I'm aiming directly at the target. Now, if natural point of aim is unfamiliar with you, then take a look at my last video, which is about marksmanship, where I explain what natural point of aim is and what we do to ensure that we maintain that. So the first thing then, position of the feet. Now if I'm shooting HFT, my foot nearest the target is going to have to be in contact with a peg. So take that as given, so we're not using a peg here. But first off, stand in the natural position, the sort of position that you would put your feet if you were just standing there having a chat with somebody. So roughly shoulder length apart. Then you would ensure that the line of your shoulders is in line with the target and where we want to have our natural point of aim. So with our foot closest to the target touching the peg or on the shooting line, we would then move our outside leg slightly out, and if it's comfortable, turn your toe out slightly. Okay. So now, finding our point of balance, you want to then move your hip, so you bring your hip over the top of the front foot. What that the effect of doing as well is bringing your hip bone up, which is going to help support your elbow when you put your supporting arm in position. So in the centre there, we're basically tilting our hip forward to bring it in line above our foot, the front foot. Notice when I do that, my upper body's not moving, that's staying in position. Then, along with our philosophy of using skeletal support for the rifle rather than muscular support, again, go and look at the previous video, we would then bring our elbow up and hook our elbow in above our hip bone so that we form a straight support down for the rifle. The hand that you're using for the trigger finger would then position roughly by the shoulder nearest to the target, and this elbow will be tucked in, not up like that, will be tucked in. So that is basically the shooting position. So obviously this is going to feel a bit weird the first time you try and do this if you haven't done it before. So I'd recommend that you spend the odd couple of minutes every now and again just practicing so that feels good, you get your balance right, you feel your balance, and you start to build up your muscle memory with that position. So let's have a look at that with the rifle. So here I am again with the S400, and you notice I'm wearing a shooting glove. The reason for this is that I find personally that it enlarges the size of your hand, so it gives you a bigger platform to rest the front of the rifle on, and also it means then that you can use your knuckles for support, and it's not going to hurt your hand, and it feels a lot more comfortable. So just to go back over what we did before then, we're moving our outside foot out and twisting the foot round. We're moving our hip forward and we bring part of the rifle in the shoulder. We've got our elbow resting above our hip bone, so if I take my hand away, you can see that we've got a nice support there, and my shooting hand, the trigger finger, roughly in line with my left shoulder, and that elbow tucked in. So we can come down to our shooting position, and looking through the reticle, we can find, if we relax and avoid putting unnecessary pressure on the rifle, we've got a very stable reticle. Now in that position, I'm looking from a natural point of aim, so I want the reticle in line with the kill of the target or with the bullseye. If I'm slightly out, say I'm higher, then what I need to do is to bring my outside foot in, and that will have a tendency then to lower the reticle. Or if I'm below and I need to get higher, move out, and that has a tendency to lift the reticle higher. Similarly, if I'm to the right, I can move my outside foot slightly forward to bring myself round to the left, or slightly rearward, bring myself back round to the right. So we're trying to get in our position before we take the shot, so that we know that when we're at rest and we're relaxed, our reticle, the natural point of aim is such that our reticle is lined up with where we want our shot to be delivered. Simples. Let's move on to the unsupported kneeling position then. But first, just want to address bags and rolls. Now, I've got a kneeling bag, I've got a homemade kneeling roll. Both of these mentioned in a previous video about ancillary equipment. Why have I got two? Well, in the summer months when it's not muddy, I tend to shoot in trainers, and the trainers stop below my ankle, so I get a lot more ankle movement. So this bag is a lot more comfortable. Full of polystyrene balls, so you can rearrange them. You can roll up the front if you want it firmer. You can leave it out so that you can actually place your knee on the front end to protect against rough ground if you don't want to wear a knee pad. But in the winter, wearing boots that go up above the ankle, or also wear my wellies, obviously your ankle joint's a bit more restricted, so I find this gives firmer support in that part of my ankle there, you can see fits in and it fills that gap, but not as comfortable as the pad is when you're wearing trainers. So we're going to bag for this demonstration today, and what I tend to do is we're using our straight line again towards what we hope will become our natural point of aim, and I'll place the bag at 45 degrees. I find personally some people like it 90, but I find it's more comfortable for me at 45 degrees. So that's where we're going to start. So we placed our bag in position, we're kneeling on our bag, I've got my toe and my forward foot pointing towards the target. What I'd recommend for kneeling shots is in HFT, where you have to be in contact with the peg, contact the peg on the side of the foot, either the outside of the foot or the inside of the foot, rather than on the toe, because that will allow you to move your foot backwards and forwards slightly while still in contact with the peg, so that you can raise or lower your knee to adjust your elevation to achieve your natural point of aim. Also need to talk about the rear foot as well. Your rear foot must be upright. You can either have the toe on the ground, or you can have the instep on the ground, so your fat foot is straight backwards flat on the ground. What you can't do, certainly in the rules that I shoot, is you can't sit with your foot like that. That's not allowed. But that's only for HFT. There's nothing to stop you doing that if you're out hunting or just general shooting. So we're in this position then. I'm sitting on the heel of my shoe. The heel of my shoe is in my butt crack, and I'm basically just using it like a perch to sit on. So I'm trying to sit as comfortably as possible in this. So again, if you've got old bones like me, you might need to practice sitting in this position every now and again just to get that muscle memory and get used to it. So as far as supporting the rifle then, thinking that we need to use skeletal support rather than muscular support, first thing is place your forearm, lay your forearm across your thigh. So you've got that full support, skeletal support there. And under the HFT rules that I shoot, another rule is that my wrist needs to be in front of my knee. So you should be able to flop your hand down, up and down in front of your knee. So that's your supporting hand. Then again, your firing arm, or with your trigger finger, you're going to have your elbow tucked in and your hand roughly around your forward shoulder. So let's get the rifle, see what it looks like with the rifle. Set myself up back in the position I was before. Lift the wrist up, and you're going to find that to get down to the rifle, you're going to have to lean back and position your forward hand so that you're high enough off your leg, but trying to maintain a stable position that's comfortable. Now personally, what I find is that if I lean back too far, I do get some pain in my hip here, which I think a lot of people might experience. So you might have to make some adjustments to get it so that you are actually shooting comfortably. And I find there that I can keep in that position. I'm fairly comfortable, and I can keep that reticle fairly still because I'm relaxed. I'm not using any muscular support at all. It's all skeletal support. So basically I can sit here and keep this rifle stable while I line up the shot. Now, as I mentioned before, if you need to adjust your alignment, you can bring that foot back, which will bring your reticle up, or move that foot forward, which will bring the reticle down. side to side movement. There's no easy way really. You'll need to do a shuffle or a shimmy. So you might find that to make a major adjustment, you're going to need to put the rifle down or hand it to your shooting partner and adjust the position of your bag. Once you practice these shots, you're used to where you need to position your bag in line with the peg or in line with your supposed natural point of aim, so that when you're in position, you'll be lined up from the horizontal position, pretty bang on every time. It's just a question of practice. So that's the unsupported kneeling position then. We've covered the unsupported standers and kneelers then. One of the things that I'd like to address is the situation of instability, because obviously in those positions, unless you're particularly gifted or you've practiced for hours and hours, you are going to find a greater level of instability when you take those shots than when you take any others. And by instability, what I mean is that reticle, you know, the crosshairs in your scope, are going to be wanging around up, down, left to right, apparently totally out of control compared to what you normally see if you're taking a supported shot or if you're taking a prone shot. So let's go back inside and we'll talk about that briefly. I want to briefly talk about aiming instability then, and refer back to this book that I introduced in the last video, Sight Alignment by Master Sergeant Jim Owens from the US Marine Corps. Now Jim had over 20 years experience of shooting with the US Marine Corps shooting team, target shooting, so he ought to know what he's talking about. And he details his experience of the period through bringing the rifle up into aim, putting the butt in your rifle, from the point of when you hold your breath to take your shot, and what your timings should be because of the way that the rifle reacts and the instability through your point of aim during that period. And he actually produced a graph to demonstrate that, which I'll show you now. So I'll get my whiteboard and we'll take a look at it. Let's take a look at Jim's graph. So the first thing that he says is that you should be sure not to hold your breath for longer than 10 to 15 seconds during shots, because otherwise you're going to start to experience blurred vision, loss of concentration, and also a tendency to jerk the trigger. So this graph then assumes that we've got good position and we've got good technique when taking our shot. So if we draw a line here, this line represents the point at which we hold our shot to take, hold our breath to take the shot, and the horizontal line is a passage of time. Okay. So what Jim suggests from his experience is that once you start holding your breath, for the first 2 to 3 seconds you're going to experience some instability until the rifle settles down. So at that point, that's 2 to 3 seconds. Then the rifle is going to settle down and it's going to move less, and that period is going to continue for roughly 4 to 5 seconds. And then after that period, the rifle then starts to become unsteady and it continues to be unstable however further you hold the shot. So what he's suggesting then is this period of relative stability is where you should be taking your shot. So to reiterate then, hold your breath
You'll experience some instability for about 2 to 3 seconds until your rifle comes to aim and starts to settle down and show less instability for a period of 4 to 5 seconds. That's where you need to take your shot. Once you go beyond that period, then your aim is going to be unsteady again, and it's going to stay unsteady for as long as you hold it there. So it's at this point here that if you haven't taken your shot, you need to be brave, come away from the aim, relax, go back to the beginning and start again. Because if you continue to beyond this point, you're definitely going to make life hard for yourself. Hope that makes sense. Let's continue with our demonstrations.
Moving on then to the supported stander. I'm going to use this tree here as my support to demonstrate. Now, as I mentioned, I've probably coming up to a couple of months away from my 2-year anniversary in HFT. When I started HFT, the way that to do a supported stander is the way that I've seen on lots of other demonstrations. It's probably the way that most people, I would say, approach their supported standers, for the simple reason that they were shown that that was the way to do it by somebody else that was shown that that was the way to do it by somebody else, and nobody probably really knows why they do it that way in the first place. So the way that I was shown was that you come up to the tree and you stand back arm's length from your tree or the post that you're going to use as your support, and then you take a half step or a step backwards and you fall forward and you put your weight on your forearm. Okay, but so that's the way I was shooting with these, and not having much success, to be honest. And so I started to think about whether this was the right way to approach these shots. Now, one thing that led me to wonder first off is that this position here, not necessarily up against the tree, but certainly up against the wall, is a stress position that's used in interrogation. So I'm thinking, why would I want to put myself in a stress position to take a shot when I need to be perfectly relaxed and comfortable to hit the kill? So that was the first point that got me wondering. The second one was that about a couple of months ago I saw a video on YouTube from a firearms instructor that was talking about shooting sticks, and he was saying, you know, why does everybody shoot standing upright, but as soon as they use sticks they stick their bum out and they're leaning forward? He said, you don't, when you're standing, you don't lean forward and stick your bum out, so why would you do it when you're shooting off sticks? And shooting off sticks is a supported standing shot, isn't it, to be, you know, for all intents and purposes. Right, so that got me thinking, well, if it's good enough for a stander shot to have your centre of balance right down to the ground between your feet, then obviously that's got to be a sensible approach for a supported stander. So I've switched to this approach where I address the supported standing shots standing rather than bending over, and I find that I hit a lot more now than I used to, because it's easier for me to relax. I can do skeletal support rather than muscular support where I'm not in a stress position, so it's easier to maintain your aim. So what we do then is basically we're converting what we learned in the supported stander and making use of a tree or post to support part of the rifle to make it steadier. So let's go and get the rifle and we look at how we do it, shall we? The way I do it. Here we go then. So I position myself following the principles of the unsupported stander, and I am far enough away that I can straight arm the tree with my palm up. You'll see that I'm wearing my shooting glove because all of those rubber granules are going to give me extra support on the tree there, so it's not going to slide. And then what I'll do bring the rifle up and support the front of the rifle on my arm, and everything else positioning is the same. Now in this position again, I'm perfectly comfortable, all my weight's taken on my feet, my balance is centered, I'm not leaning on this arm, so I'm providing skeletal support, and this is not a tiring position to be in because I'm not taking the weight of this rifle with any of my muscles, so I can stand here quite a long time. I can relax, get my breathing right, and keep that thought really still. Now, obviously, different approaches for how you come to support the rifle on the tree or post. If you're used to shooting PCP and locking the forestock into the peg, then you can do the same thing here. Just by adjusting your hand position, you can still use part of your arm to rest on as well, and you've got a very stable position. But if you're shooting PCP, if you're shooting a Springer like I do, then you will need to let the forestock sit on your arm and do what it needs to do, very much like you would do with the artillery hold. Moving on to the supported kneeler then. Now you can see that I'm in the kneeling position, the same as I was for the unsupported kneeler. We don't need to worry about our forward foot touching the peg in this instance, because we're going to be touching the tree or post with our supported hand and arm for the rifle, so therefore we're in contact with the peg, so it's not an issue. So we're free to move this forward foot wherever we want. But one thing to notice about this position is that if I'm up here with the rifle, I've supported the rifle at the front, but this elbow, even if I lock it in, is still not as supported as it could be if we change something slightly. So perfectly capable of taking a shot this way, and if you feel more comfortable using this position and just learning the one kneeling position and using this for your supported kneelers, then that's fine. But let me show you a way that we can actually improve the support of the rifle throughout the shot. I'm going to show you what's called the reverse kneeler. Now sometimes when you come up to a peg and you want to do this reverse kneeler, it gets a little bit confusing. You have to think about what you're doing. But just remember that in the reverse kneeler, your knee closest to the target is the one that goes on the ground. So you're going to put your knee on the ground that's closest to the tree or post towards the shot. Same position as before with your feet. You're sitting on the back of your, perched on the top of your shoe. But one thing to notice here now is, if I can get myself comfortable, is I've got this knee sticking up here now, which is the perfect support for my rear elbow. So let's get the rifle, and you can see how you get a lot more support in this position than the other way round. Now you'll notice with these positions, I've shown you them without the rifle to begin with. So it's always a good idea, if you're shooting HFT, to get yourself sorted and in position at your supported shot before you pick up the rifle to take the shot, rather than try and sort yourself out and get into position once you're holding the rifle, because it's a bit of a faff that way round. So don't be afraid to put your rifle down or ask your shooting partner to pass you the rifle when you're actually in position. So going up to the aim then, in our supported kneeler, in the reverse kneeling position, you can see here that down in the shot, a lot more stable, because I'm supporting the butt of the rifle using my elbow on my knee or stock on the tree or post. So that's the most stable position probably that you're going to find when you're out in the woods. So it's a good one to know. I can adjust my natural point of aim by moving my outside foot backwards or forwards to swing the reticle left or right, and I can move my hand up and down the tree to change the elevation to achieve our natural point of aim. And again, this is all skeletal support. There's no muscles involved in holding anything up. So that's the reverse kneeling supported kneeler then. I nearly said supported stander then. No, supported kneeler. Get it right, mate. Now you may be thinking, why would I go to all the trouble to learn and practice standers and kneelers? Well, if you're an HFT shooter, it's all about points. And what do points make? Yes, that's right, points make prizes. Now have a think about it. In a standard, usually in an HFT, minimum of 30 pegs. Okay. UK HFT rule courses will have 30 pegs. And under those rules, 6 of those will be positional shots. So you'll have 1 unsupported stander, 1 unsupported kneeler, which you can also take standing if you wish. You'll have 2 supported standing shots, and you'll have 2 supported kneeling shots, which also you can take standing if you want to. So that's 6 pegs out of 30, 12 possible points. Very easy on the unsupported shots to miss the plate completely and get a donut. So with those 2 pegs, that would be a loss of 4 points. Say you plated everything, that's 6 points, but you've lost 6 points off your total of 60. So a bit of effort, a little bit of practice, you can make a big potential difference to your score, because there's no doubt about it, the positional shots are the more difficult shots, or they tend to be the more difficult shots on the course. And if you're better at them than everybody else, then you're going to have an advantage. So it's worth the effort to practice and try and improve your performance on the positional shots. If you're not in HFT, if you're a hunter, then it's always handy to have the kneelers and the standers under your belt, especially if you're going out wandering around and you come across the shot and there's not a fence post or something that you can rest on. You might miss a good kill. So there you go, well worth the effort, and I urge you to actually set some time aside to practice these. You won't be sorry. Any time that you spend practicing your positional shots is well worth the effort.